Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Rib, and it is Veterans Day, and I
Well,
want to
today's
thank
Veterans Day observed. Tomorrow is
Observed.
Veterans
Yeah,
Day.
tomorrow is officially, but we celebrate it today. We should celebrate it every day. So, thank you to all of those brothers and sisters that served their country and wore the uniform of their country. Their service should never be forgotten. And
And thank you, Chip, for your service. I don't want that forgotten, that's for sure.
Well,
Um,
it was my honor to serve my country. My father fought in World War II. His unit was second in the European theater of operation for time on the line. He met the Russians at the Elbe. He was one of the first boots on the ground in Buchenwald, the first concentration camp that the American troops liberated, and he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So he proudly served. I proudly served. It was an honor to serve my country, and everybody who puts on a uniform uh, is should always be recognized and appreciated.
yeah, well, they're recognized by everyone except for Paul and Maura Healy
Yeah,
because we have homeless veterans that are out
yeah,
on the streets. We got 7,500 migrants, immigrants. I don't know if you want to use the term migrants, immigrants, illegal immigrants in Massachusetts being housed at the taxpayer expense of something like $10 million dollars a day or something, or $10 million dollars a month. And we have to pay the bill. But how about the veterans who need a place to live? How about the homeless families, which is what the law is supposed to address for citizens of this Commonwealth, not for people coming in from Mexico or Venezuela or Haiti or Guatemala. Okay, how about taking care of our own before we start taking care of everyone else? It's just like all the people bitching, pissing, and moaning about supporting Israel. Okay, the America is supporting Israel. They're just as guilty of the mass genocide, etc. Et hey, my personal opinion is we shouldn't be giving out foreign aid because we need to take care of our own first. That's where it's got to be. And until we start electing politicians who believe that it's time to take care of our own first, we're going to keep having the same crap every single year.
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think that will ever happen because politicians don't care. We've got these illegals in here. They get driver's licenses. They got mopeds in New York. There's actually all kinds of criminal activity in some of those hotels, and we have homeless people. We have drug addicted people laying all over the streets of San Francisco and every city. And we don't. And in Ukraine, we're sending them hundreds of billions of dollars, and they absolutely refuse to hold them accountable about where the money's going. And we know that we're subsidizing their pension systems and every other thing, while we have people homeless in this country, especially who have obviously addiction issues, and we also have veterans, and that is just to me shows that these politicians are nothing more than hypocrites. When you watch these people talk, they talk about, oh, we've gotta, you know, send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. Ukraine was the most corrupt country in Europe. They have a guy who outlawed the Catholic Church, um, and they have Nazis. Actually, I'm not saying that in a as a trope. I'm saying that because they actually have declared Nazis in their government who say that they are Nazis. So, and we're sending them hundreds of billions of dollars. Why? Because all these politicians make money in the war industries. They're all invested, like Cheney was with Halliburton. They made trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars with Iraq and Afghanistan, charging $26 a day for the 3 meals all the soldiers we had in those theaters of operation, and then also selling them weapons and every other thing. So they all get rich, and then we always have problems with our VA providing this level of service that they should get, these veterans who need service. So I've seen it firsthand how difficult it is. A very good friend of mine um, actually died from exposure to Agent Orange, and I actually helped him file all the paperwork it took for him to get his VA benefits. And I'll tell you, it was long and a very painful process, and it shouldn't be. Our veterans, unfortunately, they use our veterans as props. On Veterans Day, they'll all be there. Just like they're always there marching at the head of a parade when somebody dies in the line of duty. 5 minutes after they try to screw you out of a pay raise. So forgive me if I'm a little opinionated on this issue, but I've lived it and I know what it is. And the reality is that, as I've said many, many times before, there's not enough we can do for these people. There's not enough we can do because, we name buildings after politicians. And as I've said before numerous times, as far as I'm concerned, after we name every street, every building, every monument, every overpass, after an American who died and was killed in action serving their country from the Revolutionary War through today, then we can start on the veterans who had catastrophic losses of limbs. And then the Medal of Honor winners. We've got a whole litany of people who actually did something, paid a horrific price to serve their country. So, if you don't if you don't like that position, you know what you can do. Because I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, you should never have a building named after some politician. But that's the way it is. But shifting gears, didn't take long. 2 days after he was elected, Paul now says we can't afford Diman. We got to look for a loan. We got to look for some way to fund it. Well, I guess the city council were except for Michelle Dion, were accessories before, during, and after the fact. Because at the last budget hearing, they didn't even discuss funding of anything that they approved. They didn't discuss it. There was a question asked, how are you going to fund this on the back end, the police contract? And they were told, oh, we're looking at some investments down the road. That's not funding. What investments? Are you going to buy scratch tickets? Are you going to set up a lemonade stand in City Hall? How are you going to get the money? And then our illustrious CFO was asked, did you look at these numbers? And her answer was basically silence. She said, my staff did them. You're making what, 140, 150 G's? You got 2 assistants? They got a new one, the analyst, financial analyst, and you got Aya Capone. You got three people getting big money to run that department, and we have a multi-million-dollar budget, and she says, well, my staff did the numbers. Really? Have you ever heard the term, the buck stops here? You're the CFO. You should have went over those numbers with a fine-tooth comb. The city council, the financial team, and the mayor are guilty of fiscal irresponsibility. They did not live up. They did not live up to their fiduciary responsibility to spend our money wisely, and we've got case law about that too. Too bad we can't hit the mega bucks or the Powerball so we can take this stuff to court. But the people now will see in this last term that the house of cards beginning to collapse. This intricate web of lies beginning to deteriorate, because we're going to find out the kind of problems we have. And watch when they start threatening cuts and everything else, because they can't afford anything that they've spent in the last 4 years. So with that, CJ, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, what's interesting is, like you said, Paul was, every time he was asked questions about the finances, Joe says, we're flush with cash. We're flush with cash. Yeah, we're flush with cash. Flush it down the toilet. That's where we were flush with cash. And that's the sad part about it. Nobody looked at the revenue streams for this year's budget. Nobody, except for Michelle Dion. She looked at it. She looked at it closely. She started asking questions and she was shut down. The city council didn't want to hear it. And when the Diamond project came up, Paul sent it down for a debt exclusion, which I don't think you could get a debt exclusion on the Diamond project because we're not building the school. That's a bill. That's an assessment by Diamond on the city. Just like Bristol Aggie has an assessment for its school on the city, Diamond has an assessment for its school on the city. It's an assessment, which means it's a bill. I don't think you can get a debt exclusion on a bill. But Joe Camara made it clear. We built all these schools without a debt exclusion except for this Durfee. All of them without a debt exclusion. Which we said all along when we were meeting with neighborhoods that we don't need a debt exclusion. Why do you want a debt exclusion? Now they hide the money in the debt exclusion. We don't know how much that debt exclusion is. We don't know how much we're being taxed on the debt exclusion. We don't know how much we're paying on the debt exclusion because it's too difficult to put that on our tax bills. How come that's too difficult? How come it wasn't too difficult to put the CPA on our tax bills? That made it on our tax bills without a problem. No problem whatsoever. Why is it too difficult? Because it will show you how much you're paying. And the mayor doesn't want you to know how much we're paying. And this is the problem. And that's a major problem.
Well, maybe we can hire 3 more consultants and they can figure it out because it's too hard. You know, Mary Sahadi knew exactly how much we were paying on everything. She fudged some numbers once in a while to make them to pad the bill so they could hide a little bit of money and create magic money. But we know one thing about it. They had one person there, and I never ever will always give credit where credit is due. Mary Sahadi knew her numbers. She wasn't. Sometimes she manipulated those numbers because she was acting for her political boss. But when you pressed her, she knew damn well what the numbers were. We all remember when she started with the 45 million and we told them that that number was incorrect. It was 40 million. And they had a long, protracted conversation and they held their feet to the fire and she finally admitted, yes, it was 40. And we had the people who actually created those numbers in front of the council and they just, they sunk her because when they asked Gallagher, they said, no, the bill is $40 million for that particular line item. And Mary Sahadi had to say, oh, well, I added this and I added that, which had nothing to do with that. But then they got down to the reality and then they took 39 million. They were, you know, even the 40 million had a little cushion put in because it always does because of in the inflationary things of healthcare costs. There's always some budget. But they put 39 and we still ran under budget. But the reality is Mary Sahadi knew the numbers. When pressed, she could give you accurate numbers. So she was, you know, she was competent at her job. What we got now is a clown show over there. It's a clown show. We know nothing. They're all like Sergeant Schultz. We know nothing. Did you look at the numbers? No, I did not look. I'm the CFO, but I didn't look at the budget. Like that's not the most important financial document in the city of Fall River. But I didn't look at it. My subordinates did it. Really? When your house burns down and you go to the electrical contractor, guess what? When he goes to court, he's going to lose when he says, well, I let my apprentices wire at your house. Sorry, you're the guy with the license. You're the guy that's supposed to be doing his job, not your apprentices. They can help you. Well, we got a city, we got a CFO that needs all kinds of help. And even with all that help, she still doesn't do the job. And she said it. in front of a camera. And you wonder why. And we had all these people reelected. So now when you're all pissed off, the 40 some thousand people that didn't vote, and by the way, we want to make, one of our viewers said, oh, you guys were wrong. You said it's 55,000 voters and it's 58,000 voters. And well, and I know CJ knows, looked it up. Secretary of State has 55,400 voters for the city of Fall River. They have 58. And I'm going to go on record as saying I think both those numbers are inaccurate. The reality is we know how easy it is to register people to vote now. You fill out your census, they register you to vote. Oh, there's a checkbox. They don't even know what they're checking. They check a box. You get a driver's license. They register you to vote. I would say that's a severe overestimation of voters, because I'd probably say 15% of those people never have an intention of ever voting. What benefit does that do? Well, take a look down at Bridgeport, Connecticut, where they got a convicted felon as mayor, served 7 years for racketeering. And the woman that runs his front desk at City Hall was videotaped walking out the front door, stuffing the ballot boxes out in front of City Hall. And she not only did it this election for mayor in the primaries, actually a judge in Connecticut just threw out the primary and said they're going to have to do another primary election. But she did it in the previous election. She's still got charges outstanding. Isn't it amazing that she hasn't been prosecuted yet for the previous election? Maybe because she's a Democrat in a blue city, in a blue state. They never get prosecuted no matter what they do. But that's the problem. You say, why do they want to have all these voters registered? Because they look and they go, this person never voted. They never vote. So guess what? You grab a couple of ballots, fill out the name, stuff them in a box. You know, don't say there's no, you know, and it's, oh, you're an election denier. No, I'm not. There's videotapes of this. Probably in mainstream media doesn't run them a lot. But this woman has actually, she's in court right now being charged with that stuff. Threatening, coercing voters, stuffing ballot boxes. And the irony is, sometimes it's so bizarre that you have to laugh, that the other guy running for mayor was doing the same thing. They got one of his cronies stuffing the ballot boxes. So it was a contest of who could stuff the most ballots into the box. So we got Mayor Daley resurrected when he won every election in Chicago, and about maybe 20,000 dead people always voted in those elections in Chicago. So with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you.
I remember when I ran for office, and I in clear times, I ran 3 times for office. Once was in a nonpartisan election, twice was in a partisan election. And yes, I did run as a Republican, which is suicide in Massachusetts, but I did it anyways. I was able to get my message out there, and people heard it. Although, as is known, Republicans don't get elected. I'm no longer a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm unenrolled. Or, as some people like to say, independent. I'm unenrolled. And there is a group right now getting together to bring the unenrolled, the independents together, so they have a voice, because they don't have a party. Although there is a thing called the Independent Party of America, but we don't have a wide enough census for our, I guess, membership in that organization. But we're trying to put that together, and there are many people who are involved. I think one of the interesting things is, people are already questioning this Fall River election. A lot of people don't like the answers they get from the elections commissioner. A lot of people don't like the answers they get from the Secretary of State. People think that there's too much possibility. We're not saying it's happening, but there's too much possibility of election tampering when ballots are being counted without viewers, without witnesses. When you have And now, when that came up during the primary, automatically Ryan Lyons, who's the election commission, said anyone can come and watch us process the mail-in ballots. Here's the problem with the mail-in ballots: the elections office was sending out the envelopes with no ballots in them. They had an envelope to mail you the ballot. They had an envelope to mail the ballot back. They had the instructions, but they had no ballot. So obviously, the elections office doesn't know what they're doing, or they're having a difficult time knowing what they're doing. When you look at the fact that some of those people have been there forever, but again, some have not. And the people in that office can be very rude at times. They don't get rude with me, but I do know some people who have called that they've been rude to. Uh, you know, like one of the people turned around and said to a caller, "What do I look like? 411? Call 411 and get the information." So this is what we pay tax dollars for, okay? And our election system needs to be looked at very carefully because the Democrats, Alan Sylvia, Paul Schmidt, Carol Fiola, Michael Rodrigues, have changed the rules in the election process so much that it leans towards the Democrats and election corruption. That's my opinion. Like it or not, that's my opinion. And it's not only my opinion, many people in this state believe that the changes in the election law are now as such that they can be corrupting elections across the state. And I'll guarantee you, when we have the presidential election next year, you're going to hear a lot of people saying that the Massachusetts elections could be corrupted. And I don't know if you want that on your headline or not, but that's a possibility.
No, you're right, CJ. Listen, they talk about there was no, election deniers, but they had videos of people carrying ballots in to stuff in the last election. But they said, oh, it wasn't enough to swing the election, which how do we know? But the reality is, I'm an advocate of doing what a lot of people think should be done. The Democrats keep saying we want to make it easier for people to vote. No, they want it easier for them to tamper with stuff. Oh, give them mail-in ballot. Out in Bridgeport, Connecticut, they were talking about these people going to elderly people's houses that can barely function, filling out their ballot for them, voting for them, and then having these people sign them. So, listen, as far as I'm concerned, you have an absentee ballot. We always have had one, because if you can't physically get there, and there should be the old stringent criteria. For everybody else, we should have one voting day. It should be declared a national holiday so people have nothing to do but go to the polls. We should vote with paper ballots and show voter ID. Period. And then, look, they just had, I forgot exactly where it was. I won't take a guess. But there was already a problem. It may have been Virginia, because Virginia is one of the most prominent. But they had a whole bunch of places. Kentucky had elections and stuff. But they had voting machines that they said were actually flipping the vote. If you voted yes, it registered a no. And they said, "Oh, we found it, and we're going to fix it. It's all going to be corrected." They got these machines. Half of them don't work. In the last presidential election, we had ballot boxes down. It took us 2 months to get the results. You vote with paper ballots, you count them, and you got absentee ballots. It's easy. But you see, they try to create a problem that doesn't exist. Just like when they say, "Oh, you want to get more money for your product? Create big businesses create a phantom shortage. Oh, there's a shortage of antifreeze. Now you got people killing each other at Walmart over antifreeze. Oh, there's a shortage of Huggy Bears or whatever that was, some toy, and now you can charge triple, and there's a run on everything. So now it's, oh no, voting is so complicated. We got to make it really easy. It's really easy. You walk into the polls and you check a box. This is a con to let them be able to control that. And it is what it is. And it's always going to be like that as long as these people, they're not interested in you. All you have to do is look at how we started this show off. Veterans in the streets with no homes. Veterans pushed out of their apartments to put in illegals. And I'm not going to use any euphemism. You know, undocumented, migrant. We don't need 10 million migrant workers to pick fruit in California. We've had migrants coming into this country temporarily to do since Cesar Chavez. It was never a problem because they came, they did their job, they got their pay, and they went back to their countries. This is not, they're not migrants. They're invaders. They're illegals. And we are treating these people better than our own, and that is a travesty. Especially our veterans. But all the people, all those people, drug addicted, laying in feces on the streets of of most of the major cities in this country, and allowed to, because why? They shut down all the institutions. They've defunded all the programs to help these people. They're beginning to talk about it now because there's a presidential campaign going on. But the reality is, there's no excuse for this. This country has the resources to ensure that everybody in this nation can get the help they need to live a decent life as an American. But no, we're still giving money to Germany from World War II. We're still helping foreign countries that we beat in a world war.
Japan,
that's right. We're still giving them money, and they're all rich. Germany is probably the most economically strong country in Europe. But we're still giving them money. We're giving Ukraine with that little thug that was under investigation that shut down the Catholic Church in his country. Nobody said it. They said it on that Republican thing, Ramaswamy. He's got a set, that kid. He's got some cojones. That kid called out the moderators and everybody else. You may not like him, but I'll tell you what, nobody refuted what he said when he talked about Ukraine. Nobody knows where the money's going. Hundreds of billions of dollars, they just keep sending it. While Americans are scratching to make ends meet, the credit card debt's out of control. People are going bankrupt at a minute. The credit card debt is at an all-time high. It's in the trillions. People are living off their credit cards and they can't do it. The only people that can live off their credit cards are government. Like Paul, he's been living on a credit card for 4 years. Guess what? Now we're going to pay. We're going to pay. Oh, we're not flush. We're not flush. We're going to have to look for a way to fund this. So now we're going to pay the Diman debt that they said, oh, and Joe Camaro's right. We did pay for all these schools. And guess who was on a committee that created a lot of these schools many years ago? A lot of these middle schools and stuff like that, and grammar schools. I was on the Education 2000 committee that was part of the Fall River Regional Task Force. We drafted all these schools in the 90s and they began building them in the 2000s. And they were all funded because we ensured that the city had the money and we had a city council and a government. But those were the good old days, CJ, when we used to have 70%, 65, 70, 75%, sometimes 80% show up at the polls. So there is a moral to that story. And I will turn it back over to you.
Well, it makes it very interesting. When you have a good voter turnout, things change, things happen, and most of the time, those things that change and happen are for the good. Yes, we see you voted, Chip. Thank you very much for your vote. We can't hear you, Chip.
I said, no, I just printed this up on my printer because I'm a Democrat. No, I didn't. Actually, I voted. And my next door neighbor works at the polls, and she can document the fact that they all know me when I go in there. And I did vote, right at the top of my street.
There you go. There you go. Well, I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, and remember your veterans.